everyone, good morning and welcome along to lesson 2 in our foundation of watercolour class. Now this is a really fun one. We're going to be playing with our primary colours only. Okay, so just a reminder, our primary colours are Hansa yellow, phthalo blue and quinacridone magenta. Now, the first thing we're going to do is show you how you can use all these colours and create your own colour wheel. So I have my mixing palette beside me and there's one I made earlier. That's what we're going to do. So first thing you need to do whilst I sort the screen out is to draw a circle. Grab a roll of tape or a lid off something and just draw yourself a circle. I'm going to disappear off the screen so that you can see my mixing palette and then we'll get started. So as well as colour mixing, we are going to be talking about glazing as well. So I want you to have another piece of card to your side, and as we mix our colours, we're going to create a swatch. The reason we're doing this early on as we go is that these need to be dry for me to show you the glazing technique. So I'm going to have a piece here. I'll keep the colour wheel in shot, and the first thing we want to do to our circle is just separate it into 3 triangles. So I'm going to draw a line down the middle from the top to the middle and then out either side. So it's like a clock face at say 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock. They need to be roughly equal, but don't worry too much. So we've got our 3 sections. The first thing we're going to do is so simple. We're just going to paint our primary colours. And I want you to paint them quite creamy for this. So into our Hansa yellow. Make a nice puddle to one side of your plate or mixing palette with some water. So it's nice and creamy. And we're just going to paint a triangle at the top at 12 o'clock. Fabulous. Nice and easy. Now to fade your colours out and make them lighter, you add more water. We're doing this quite creamy, but if we come in with a damp brush, we can fade that down to the middle so it gets lighter as we add more water. The next one we're going to paint is our magenta, and we want to put this on the 4 o'clock mark, nice and creamy again. We're going to paint our triangle. I'm going to clean my brush off and just tap it on your tissue, remember, to get rid of extra water, and fade that down to the middle so we can see how much lighter it gets as it comes to the middle of our clock face. And then lastly, with a clean brush, pick up your blue, make a nice creamy puddle of your blue. We're putting quite a bit on the palette here, and there's a reason which will become clear. I'm just going to put some more quinacridone down because I'm going to need it later on. Okay, so clean brush, pick up your phthalo blue, and on the 8 o'clock mark we're going to paint our beautiful vibrant phthalo blue in a little triangle. And then with just some water, blotted brush, we're just going to fade that down to the middle. Now, let me tell you before we mix our second, so these are our primary colours. The next colours we're going to mix are our secondary colours. And that's just a case of blending these colours together like we would have done at school. Except instead of red, we're using magenta. Now, magenta, and we touched on this yesterday, is your primary colour, a pinky red. It could be quinacridone rose, quinacridone magenta, but you do not want a red. Red can be mixed with the pinky red, with quinacridone magenta and yellow. If you look in your printers at home and look at the cartridges that you buy yellow, blue and magenta. So let's mix our secondary colours. So I'm going to take a bit of magenta and mix into my yellow at one side to make a nice orange. A little bit more yellow in there. You want roughly a 50-50 mix, and then midway between these points we're going to paint our orange. Beautiful bright orange. Take a clean brush, get rid of the excess water, blot it on your tissue and bring that down to the middle. We're just going to work our way around the wheel. And something important about using these colours is you're going to get the best purples. So into my magenta I'm going to take a bit of phthalo blue, a little bit more just to one side to make my purple. 50-50 mix, roughly speaking, is what we're looking for. And again, in between the magenta and the blue, we paint our purple swatch, blot our brush and bring it down, fade it down to the middle. It's difficult working upside down. And lastly, on our secondary colours, we're going to add yellow to the blue. Again, about a 50-50 mix, halfway between yellow and blue. We're going to pop our green, blotted brush and just fade it down to the middle. So you can see how the strength changes when you add more water. I'm just going to drop a little bit more purple there because I've not faded it properly. There we go. Gorgeous. So that's our primary. We can put a P there, primary and secondary. Now this is where things get interesting, because if you was to mix, let me just show you, I'm going to mix some red. I'm going to pop a little bit more magenta into my orange to make red. And if I mix red with blue, I'm going to do it over here. Can you still see the palette? Make a bit more red over here just to make my point. Yellow and magenta, make your red, and then we're going to try and make purple. Okay, there's my purple. Can you see how grey that's become? And you might have found this before and you're back and forward adding a bit more red in. Whoops, I didn't put red. A bit more red in, a bit more blue in, and you get the kind of purple, but it's not quite what you was looking for. It's more greyed out. And the reason for this is, as we now know, red contains yellow. And when we mix all of our primary colours together, we get a grey. So in the red that you have been taught at school to mix red and blue to make purple, hidden, unbeknown to you in the red, is a touch of yellow. So actually you're mixing all three colours. So you can mix some purples with reds, but they're going to be a bit greyed out. Let me move that to one side. So on a spare piece of card, I just want you to paint down your secondary colours in a swatch. So we'll take our green, we're going to take our purple, just going to mix a little bit more purple. Now purple, there we go. And we're going to take our orange. Because I've played around with this, I need to add a bit more yellow back in. And we'll paint down our orange, ready for us to play with later. If you can also, on this piece of paper, paint your primary colours down. You might need another piece. We're going to go yellow, should be okay. Yellow, magenta. And we need to leave these to dry so we can play with them later when I show you glazing. It's a different way to mix colours in watercolour. It's also used in oils and acrylics. So we have our 6 swatches and we'll leave them to one side to dry. Okay, let me just mix a bit more. Put a bit more magenta down there. Okay, so now we're going to fill in the gaps. So between the yellow and orange, we want to add more yellow to our orange. And we'll make a yellow orange. It's going to be a bit brighter than before. Your colour should be a bit golden like. Blot your brush and spread that down to the middle. And next, we're going between magenta and orange and we're going to make our red. So into our puddle, we're taking our magenta to create our red. These are your tertiary colours. There we go. And then between purple and magenta, we're going to go pinky purple. So a bit more magenta in your mix and you'll get more of a damson-y colour. This is why I get cross when I see people selling big sets of paints. Yes, they're handy to have all the colours pre-made, but are you getting harmony in your painting? By learning to mix your colours, everything you paint will come from that same core base. Okay, between the purple and the blue, we're going to add a bit more blue in, and you should get something like an ultramarine blue next. So it's our blue purple. This is so pretty, I could do this all day. Blot your brush, give it some water and feed it down to the middle. Okay, and then we've got blue green. We want to add more blue to our green, so I'm going to mix that up and we're going to get kind of something like a viridian, a much brighter bluer green. Blot your brush and pull it down to the middle. And then lastly, we're going to add some yellow back in and make something akin to a tennis ball. You know, that lovely zesty green. Beautiful. Now look how vibrant this colour wheel is. If we'd used red, we would find that particularly this end of the colour wheel would look faded out and a bit grey. Just pop your little T there. How pretty is that? It's a work of art on its own. Okay, keep that to one side so you can refer to it and really get to know your colour wheel. Think about yellow, yellow, orange, orange, red, magenta, magenta, purple, purple, blue, purple, blue, viridian, green, and zesty green, I'm going to call that one. So keep that nearby. I'll keep my dry one nearby. So, what's missing from our colour wheel? We've got all our bright colours, which are great, and you can paint a painting with all bright colours, but it kind of gets a bit jarring for the viewer when there's all bright colours. We need something to work against to calm it down. So we're missing our browns and our greys. So what we're going to do now is grab another piece of paper or turn one over that you've been using before, and we're going to mix our greys. Okay, so remember what I said before. To create a neutral colour, you mix all three primaries, yellow, red and blue. So I'm just going to clean a bit of my palette so I've got some space. So let's do that now. Doesn't matter which way you start. I generally start with my blue. Nice and creamy. On the plate with your blue. Clean your brush and pick up some magenta to make your purple. Nice inky purple. More on the blue side than the red side. More this than this. And then into that we're going to take some yellow. Oops, not too much. Mix that in. It takes a bit of practice, but let's paint this down. Look at that beautiful grey that we've created. Gorgeous grey from our three primaries. And that grey can change depending on the percentage of each colour you put in. So if I add a bit more magenta, just a little bit, when you're mixing colour, just a little bit at a time. So I'm going to make my base again, blue, magenta, whoops, magenta, and have it a bit more pinky this time, slightly more purple, and we're going to add our yellow again. And this time you'll see I've created a bit of a warmer grey, more on the brown side, and that's because I put a bit more magenta into my mix. But how beautiful are these colours? And we can play around with our primaries. We'll put a bit more magenta in, taking it further this way on the colour wheel, and add some more yellow, and we should get a brown. Okay, because red and yellow give us our orange, and then we're adding a bit of the blue to tone it down. Look at those beautiful, beautiful colours, all mixed from your primaries, just with different percentages. So there's also an easier way to do this. Let me just stop there a second while you play with your colours. As I said, it takes a bit of practice, getting the percentages of your colour right and just playing and learning what happens when you add more blue, what happens when you add more magenta, what happens when you add more yellow, and create these lovely neutral colours. Because when all three colours are mixed together, they neutralise each other out. I'm going to show you that again, but in an easier way. So I'm going to keep my red there, and I'm going to remix my green. I just want an equal portion of yellow to blue, as equal as I can. Okay, there's my green, there's my red. Now if we look at the colour wheel, actually I need a bit more blue in there. We're going to look what's opposite red. Let's just talk about that for a second. The colours that are opposite each other on the colour wheel are called complementary. So if you draw a line across from the red, we get bluey green. If we draw a line from the yellow to the purple, we'll get a grey or a brown. So mixing complementary colours will give you a neutral colour. Why do you think that is? Well, it's because we know the red has magenta and yellow, and we know the green has blue and yellow. So therefore, all three primaries exist in these colours that are opposite each other. All three primaries exist. So, come back to my swatch. And we are going to mix green and red. So I'm going to take some of my green and mix it into my red. We get this lovely browny grey. Again, it depends how much green you put into your red. If I put more green into the red, it's going to change again. Lovely, soft. Like, I always refer to this like pebbles on the beach. I'm going to go the other way. Let me just mix a bit more green. Make my base green again. Bit bluey green. Okay, and I'm going to take my red into the green. There we go, our neutral colour. Let's have some fun with that with our purple, shall we? So I'm going to mix a bit more purple because we run out of our colour quite quickly. That's magenta and phthalo blue, and I want it about 50-50 mix. Beautiful purple. We can paint that down first. We'll do it slightly different this time, and then opposite purple I know is plain yellow. So I'm going to paint my yellow here. Then we're going to bring them together. Just walk a damp brush towards the purple and let it mix in the middle. Now, creating swatch cards like this are really useful, and keeping them, maybe cut your cards smaller and do a swatch for each colour. Okay, we can do it the other way. Bring our purple onto the palette and mix on the palette. And there we have our neutral. Now if I want that to go more grey, I'll simply bring more purple in. And then it switches to a beautiful purpley stone dove. I'd say like a dove grey. Isn't that a wonderful, joyous thing to do? Let's do all of our colours like that. Let's do them. Let's do some more. You could lose a whole day doing this. So let's pick our green and magenta. So we've got our green here. We're going to paint our green. In a little swatch. We're going to leave a bit of space and just paint your magenta on its own. Opposite the green is the magenta. And walk that magenta up to the green. And then in the middle, we're going to get our neutral. Our lovely grey in between the two colours. Just going to pop a bit more green on there. Gorgeous. Let's bring that out to the side. Lovely grey soft colours. Where should we go next? Have we done orange and blue? Orange and blue. Let's mix some more orange. Just going to clean that out because it's got a bit muddy. So very quick way to mix your natural looking colours. Mixing orange, aren't we? I have to remember what I was doing then. Orange, equal parts, yellow to red. On with our orange. And opposite the orange is our dark blue. So dark blue. Remember, we take our blue, and to make it darker, something like ultramarine blue, we're going to add a touch of magenta, just a touch, and it'll go that lovely inky blue. Paint that next to it, and then come together. Take that off to the side, and you'll see what you've mixed. Beautiful, beautiful grey. We can also mix our browns. So we've done some that look a bit browny. So to get the brown, you want a bit more red, magenta and yellow in your mix. And all we're going to do is bring a little bit of this blue into the orange. And we're going to paint that down. So going more like a burnt sienna, and add a bit more blue in. Much more brown. I'm just going to mix a little bit more orange because I'm using it all up. Get your orange base and then add a bit more blue. Oh, this is a beautiful. I've gone a bit heavy on the blue. And I've created this gorgeous sap green. And that's good. It's a beautiful colour, but I want it back to brown. So I'll just put my magenta back in. And now we're creating our brown shades. If you want it a bit more orange, add your yellow back in. And as I say, you can lose yourself for hours just mixing your neutral colours, but the easy one to remember is keep your colour wheel, and whatever is opposite will mix a neutral, or just take your 3 primary colours together. I've got yellow on my finger. Let's clean that off. So why is this important other than being able to mix these colours? And you can take your grey really dark as well. Okay, let's just do that before I get sidetracked. So we'll go back to using our primaries, nice and creamy this time, because we want a strong colour. So we're going to go back to that first grey we mixed here, but we're going to make it creamier. Take it to your dark blue, and then add a little bit of yellow. If it goes green, you need to add a bit more magenta. If it goes brown, you need to add a bit more blue. Here we go. Now, beautiful dark grey. Same as a Payne's grey. And that's actually how my Payne's grey was formulated. I formulated these colours myself and they're now made for me. And that's how my Payne's grey or Friend's grey was mixed, using all 3 primaries. So it just speeds things up. And the reason I put 5 colours in the set is to speed things up for you. So you've got a brown straight away, and you've got a grey straight away that you can use. So, was that fun? Look at all these beautiful colours we've mixed. Gorgeous, gorgeous colours. Now, another reason this is important, and I see so many so-called artists doing this, is when they're putting a shadow under something, they'll pick a grey. They'll just go for their grey, or they'll mix their grey. I'm going to come back to something that we did yesterday. Let me just find a bit of paper from yesterday. What shall I use? The trees. I'll use the trees that we did. So if I want to add shadow under something that's blue-green, like we have here, if I could just reach for my grey and create a shadow underneath. It's not too bad because it's quite close to the colour we've got. However, to get something more natural looking, we'll mix our grey with the complementary colour. So our blue-green, let's remind ourselves, was orange. So I shall mix some blue-green again and add some orange to it. Now you can mix your orange to one side. And I'm going to mix that together with my blue-green. And this gives me a much more natural shadow colour. If we paint that on, you can see the red from the orange coming through, and it's a much better shadow colour. Something else I can show you about shadow colours, and this hurts me the most. I recently did a Watercolour Wednesday, I've not even framed it yet, of these glorious daffodils. And I watched another artist who I'm sure you know, who done a daffodil tutorial, and he reached for the grey to put the shadows on the yellow. That really is not the best way to do it. When do you ever see a grey daffodil? And to create a more natural look, we put the opposite colour as our shadow. So purple and yellow. I'm going to clean my palette again because it's getting a right mess. So using complementary colours to make your shadow using your colour wheel really is the way to go. I'm not going to paint on this because this is finished, but we have a yellow swatch here. So I'm going to prove my point. We're going to mix our purple, opposite on the colour wheel, equal amounts of both. I want the shadow fairly light, a little tiny bit more magenta in there. So I'm going to paint a diluted wash, and this is a glaze. This is called glazing. So I'm not working whilst it's wet. I'm working on dry paint. And I'm going to bring that purple over the yellow. And watch what happens. We're getting this lovely, natural brown grey. And then I can soften that edge, because if I leave that, it's going to dry with a crispy line. We don't want to reactivate the paint underneath, so be gentle. And just spread that purple out to create your shadow colour. And we can do the same on the purple. You'll get a slightly different result. Take some watered down yellow over the purple. Nice and gentle, you don't want to reactivate the paint. Blot your brush and then come in with a little bit of water and allow that to soften and bleed into the water that we've just put down. So we're getting these gorgeous shadow colours that work because nature tells us it works. They're opposite on the colour wheel. So this technique is called glazing, as I just said. You have to wait for your base colour to dry, and then you take a light colour over the top, and be gentle not to reactivate the colour underneath. So we can also use exactly the same colour over the top of our swatches and darken them. Let me get my other swatches we made earlier. So I can take my magenta, because that's the easy one, nice and watery, and I'm going to come over the top with the same, exactly the same colour, but because we're embracing the luminosity of watercolour, it's transparent. So it's like looking through plates of glass laid one on top of the other. Or when you're at the beach and you wear those silly glasses with red lenses, and then a little bit of water just to soften that in. So I'm making a darker area. It could be in a petal where I want to shade one side. So like we did yesterday, just as a reminder, let me find my pile of stuff from yesterday. We can mix these colours wet on wet. It's a different technique. Or you can mix your colours in the palette. But working in this way is going to give real vibrancy to your work. So let's just do that again. We're going to do our yellow and purple because I've got that mixed. Put my purple on, nice and wet, so it's flowing. And remember, for wet in wet, when you want paint to move, you want the paint in your palette and the paint in your paper equal wetness. And we can drop some purple in one side. Okay, still making our grey, and that will just bleed into the yellow. Gorgeous. They're all gorgeous and they all have a purpose. It's understanding what you can do with watercolour that we're here to do today. We can also come the other side of our yellow and take some magenta, like I did with the robin example yesterday, and we can drop some magenta in the other side. I've got a little bit of brown still on my brush, so it might go a bit muddy. And then encourage that to mix, and then our magenta turns red, wet into wet. So that's wet into wet, and this is glazing. We'll do a few more examples, and the more you do, the more it will sink in. So on our magenta, we're going to take our yellow, nice and thin, and I'm going to come in this side. That side's wet, remember, and just glaze over that corner. So now we've got orange and our deeper magenta. We'll do the same with the orange, shall we? Because I've got the two colours on my palette ready. We'll mix our yellow into our magenta to make our orange, and we'll glaze the same colour over the top on one corner. Making it darker, exactly the same colour, exactly the same consistency, and just taking it over the top of dried paint. So opposite of orange was our purple, and we're going to bring the purple for the shadow over the other side, and see how that's neutralised. It's neutralised the orange and given us a shadow colour. We're going to work across all of these using the complementary colour. So I'm going to do purple next because I've already got purple mixed. Taking it nice and gently over one side of my swatch. The complementary to purple is yellow. So come in the other side with my yellow. Maybe leave leave a line in the middle so you can see your base colour coming through and the way it's affected by these different washes. Just clean that out again. What a waste. What a waste. Okay. And now we're going to do the green. And mix our green again, our neutral green, 50-50 mix. Take it nice and thin with some more water. And we're going to glaze over one side with our green, intensifying that green. Quite a bit of water on my brush there. And opposite of green, let's remind ourselves, is magenta. So our watery magenta coming over the other corner to create our shadow colour. So a thing to remember is complementary colours next to each other work so well, okay? And I'm jumping around a little bit here, but complementary colours next to each other work really well. But when you mix them together, they neutralise each other, okay? So next to each other, purple and then our yellow work so beautifully together. It's a lovely colour scheme. But as we saw earlier, when we mix them, we get a brown or a grey in that middle area. Think of things in nature. What can we think of? A poppy field. A poppy field always looks spectacular. It's red and it's green. So we've got our poppies. And they're sitting next to our green grass. And they work so well together until we mix them. And then they neutralise each other out. Neutralising, giving us that mud. Now we want to mix mud, we need to know how to mix mud so we know how to avoid mud. Okay, we're nearly finished on this. So our yellow is purple, it's complementary, remember, opposite. So I'm going to do my purple down this end. And I'm going to take fresh yellow to intensify. Now, glazing, you can do multiple layers. The key is to allow it to dry in between. So when I do some flower work and I'm doing detailed flowers, I will start with my base colour, then I'll build up with gentle layers over the top, allowing them to dry and coming in again with another gentle colour over the top. So that leaves us with our blue, and the opposite to our blue is our orange. Let's mix our orange again. So you hear people talking about warm and cool colours. I would say for this stage in your watercolour journey, don't worry about that. So I'm going to take my blue over one side. Look how darker that becomes. And then my orange over the other side to get a natural, beautiful shadow colour. You can now see really clearly how your complementary colours neutralise and give you a natural colour, great for shadows, perfect for shadows. And this is just one layer looking through the glass, laying over the top of another. Okay, that's it for today. A nice short one today. Now, practice this, play with your colours, make your colour wheel, do some wet in wet techniques from yesterday, and then do some glazing like we've done today. And the next Tuesday, very exciting, we will be painting our hair. And in our hair, we are going to use wet in wet techniques and some glazing. So we're going to combine what we've learned during these first 2 sessions and bring it all together. And I will recap at the beginning of the hair on the techniques we're going to use. We'll do a little practice. Have your hair sketched out. You can print off the handout and trace it down onto your paper. Just scribble over the back with a soft pencil, a 4B or a 6B. Simply shade over the back, flip it over and trace down onto your watercolour paper. I did them A5 size because you got A5 paper in your pack. Now it's better to work small and build up to bigger, but if you're more confident and you have some A4 watercolour paper, then feel free to enlarge that picture and go big. I will be painting in A4 so you can see more clearly what I'm doing step by step. So thank you very much again for signing up to this foundation course. I hope you find it informative, and I'll see you for the hair next week. I think it's a bunny. It might be a bunny. Bye for now. Bye bye.